Howdy, welcome back to Dion Talk. Someday, I may care what people think about me.
But not today.
Until then, I'm going to keep sharing the information that I'm hoping helps you reach financial freedom. The purpose of my content is to help the average individual understand that you can reach financial freedom and make work optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. What's ironic is just trying to share this information triggers a few people. I've been featured on BiggerPockets, and I've been featured in Business Insider and a few other places talking about how I believe an average person can reach financial freedom. And there are groups of people who don't like landlords, don't like evil capitalists. So I got together with a friend of mine, Millennial Mike, who happens to be another evil capitalist who's also making work optional and trying to share his strategies on how he did that with you. We're going to talk about some of the responses I got from me trying to share how to make your life better. Enjoy.
How's it going, guys? It's your boy Mike from Seattle, and I have with me a very special guest today, Dion from the YouTube channel Dion Talk. Dion, go ahead and say hi.
Howdy. I'm excited for this. Thanks for having me on today. I have a feeling after I get attacked by all these comments that I'm probably going to have, I'm going to cry myself to sleep tonight on my lumpy mattress full of cash.
So the topic for the day, Dion, if those of you who don't know, had a Business Insider article written about him. Well, then that article was taken and shared on the social media platform Reddit. And the shared article on Reddit got thousands and thousands and thousands of comments, downvotes, hate, and love, but not very much of it. Essentially, there's a lot of folks who really did not appreciate Dion's binder strategy, which is what he's best known for on BiggerPockets podcast and a lot of other online forums where he explains to you and me, landlords, how to get your tenant to agree to raise the rent and keep them happy during the process, which seems a little bit foreign of a concept. How do you get your tenant to say, man, I want the rent to go up and still have them be happy? Well, maybe Dion, if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief overview of how that binder strategy works, just to set the tone for the video.
Sure. I call myself, in my own words, a lazy investor. I like to buy properties that already have tenants in place. And my goal is not to disrupt that tenant. And normally when I acquire properties, the previous owner hasn't done rent increases for a long time, hasn't taken care of the property. So the tenants are very far below area average rents. What most landlords would do is want to buy an empty property. So they would either have the first owner kick the tenants out, or they would buy the property and then kick the tenants out. What I do is I present information to the tenants. I show them what current area market rents are in a 3-ring binder. That's why we call it the binder strategy. I literally show them the property and how much I paid so that they know that my taxes and my insurance is going to be based on this new price, not what the previous owner said. So I'm letting them know my expenses have gone up. I let them know what the area average rents are for similar units in the area so that they know how good of a deal they've been getting. They know my best option would be for them to move out, for me to do a rehab, and then for me to get area average rents. I don't want to do a rehab because I said myself, I'm lazy, but I also don't want to disrupt the tenants' lives. So I show them the rents, and then I ask the tenants, here's what the rents are. If you were to move out and I was to fix the place up, here's what you're paying, which is usually hundreds of dollars less. I ask the tenants what they think would be fair. And so far, 100% of the time, the tenants have asked for the rent to go up, but not to the area average. They want to keep it low so they're still getting a good deal. I agree to this because I'm not having to do a rehab or find a tenant or advertise the unit. So it works for everybody. I've been doing this for 10 years. And in those 10 years, I have 16 rental units. I've only had 2 tenant turnovers because the tenants are happy. I do fix places up. I do things like put in coated locks and motion sensor LED lights. And I ask the tenants if there's anything that they would like fixed. And I only do this change at the end of their current lease. The 2 tenant turnovers that I had was because one tenant went to the hospital and passed away and the other one inherited a house. So far, 100% of the time, the tenants have requested a rent increase and been happy and stayed as existing tenants. So for me, it's a way that I can find properties on the MLS that have existing tenants below the area average rent and still turn it into a cash flowing deal.
So what you just heard here is a greedy capitalist explaining to you how he takes advantage and extorts, coerces his tenants through shady, high-pressure sales tactics to get them to agree to raise their own rent because they're uneducated about the rights that they have. Or at least this is what the Reddit comments seem to suggest, one after the next. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the actual comments on this post that's on Reddit and all of the interesting, non-family friendly comments that were made. They will be being edited in real time by me because some of them had colorful language in them. So what I'm going to jump into here is I noticed as I read through the hundreds of comments, certain themes that seemed to be repeated. So I'm going to go ahead and address one of the themes. For instance, something like Dion deserves a very painful fate to come his way. And then we're going to read some of the comments and give Dion the chance here to defend the evil capitalistic structure that we live within, and defend his siphoning the surplus labor of the value of the worker. So that's what we're going to get started with. First topic for the day is Dion, you made a poor financial decision. Practical_cobbler says, can I whip out my budget and show him what I earn? Ask him what he thinks is fair since he's so reasonable. And Iceman Kind follows up with, well, I can see why it works on people, but I also think it's really easy to flip back on them being Dion. So when you bought it, you were aware there's a tenant and aware there's a tenant paying only X number of dollars a month. You were aware of the sale price of the property, your mortgage price, and property taxes. So you want me, the tenant, to pay more because you admit you offered too much for the house. You bought a fixed income stream for more than it was worth, and you want me, the renter, to compensate you? Dion, what are your thoughts to that?
I think that actually these are good comments. This means that these people read the article and understood the binder. Mm-hmm. A lot of the comments that I saw, you could tell they weren't subscribed to Business Insider, which is it's got a paywall. It's like $1 for a month subscription or $11 after that or something. But most people saw the title and attacked me for that. This sounds like they actually read the binder strategy, and then they point out, I made a poor financial decision. So it's going to take me a second to think because we're reading these in real time. So I'm getting a chance to react to these because I looked at some of these comments the first day that the article came out. And it's kind of funny to me. It's in a Reddit group called Anti-Work, which I agree with. Literally the statement I say on my YouTube channel all the time is, I believe the average individual can make work optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. I'm against work too. I think we need to work for at least 5 to 10 years to make work optional, that we don't just need it not to exist. But I knew that there were tenants getting a better deal than area average rents justified. And I don't raise them to area average rents. I include them in the conversation. So since it's worked 100% of the time and the tenants have requested a rent increase that brought it to the return I was looking for, I don't think it was a bad financial decision. And my tenants are happy. If I ever had a tenant complain, I would rethink this strategy, but it hasn't happened yet. There are just a lot of tenants who haven't been watching what's happening to area average rents. Mm-hmm. They haven't been watching what's been happening with home price sales either. So they're actually being educated with information that you can find with a 5-minute Google search. It would take that long to get the same information that I'm sharing with them. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I'm presenting false information or being high pressure. I ask them what they think would be fair. I don't say, if you don't agree to raise the rent, I'm going to have to kick you out. I don't even imply that. I ask what they think is fair. And so far, no tenant has said where my rent is fair, or even too small of an increase is fair. With the information, they've agreed with me that the number that they suggest has made sense every time so far.
So just so folks know, obviously I'm a landlord myself. I own my own rental property. So in terms of the bias associated with this video, obviously I'm biased in one direction. But like Dion, at one point we were not well off. We were poor ourselves. We've gone through financial struggles. I rented for 10 years of my adult life. But I did try to pick comments that some of them, yes, are a little funny and attacking, but some of them were good. And I thought that was an interesting question they had is, well, okay, well, what if I come to you and show you my financial position? What are you going to do? And as Dion said, if they're not paying attention to the market, they may not know. For instance, I have a duplex. I rent out one side of it for $21.50 a month. My next door neighbor owns an exact identical duplex. He's had a tenant in there for 6 years. That guy just moved out. He was paying $13.75 a month. Exactly identical properties, exactly identical location, as close comparison you could have. His tenant 6 years ago got in at $13.75. Mine last year got in at $21.50. Not because I'm raising the rents on someone, but that's just what the area average is going to be. And now those folks have moved out. I had a conversation with the other landlord, and he's like, I'm going to raise it to the same thing you're doing. So Dion's not sitting here saying, I'm going to go in there and extort these folks. He's saying, I'm going to try to split the difference with them so they feel good about it and have an opportunity to stay where they are. All right about that, Dion?
Yes. And this person actually had a good point when they said, what if I share my financial situation with you, which I've had tenants do. I had a tenant come to me who was on a month-to-month lease, saw that I purchased the place, saw that I was fixing things up. They came to me before the binder strategy and asked if they could raise their rent $155 if I would sign a 1-year lease. So they basically binder strategied me saying, we want a year lease so you can't kick us out, but we'll do a rent increase to do that. I got more of an increase from the other tenants in that property than that, so that they binder strategied me. I also purchased a property that had an older couple. He was in his 70s. She was probably really close. And they were fixed income. I never touched their rents. When I purchased it, he actually asked me, are you buying this owner occupied? Are you going to kick us out and then move in? I said, no, actually, I buy investment property. And that, I bought this property as an investment. I don't plan on moving in. He said, great. I plan on living here until I die, which he did. Once he moved out, then I did a rehab, and it's now at area average rents. And it wasn't even much of a rehab, but their financial situation dictated whether I would even do the binder or not.
So what I'm hearing is that if anyone from the Reddit group Anti-Work decides to watch this video, be prepared to hit Dion with your Uno reverse card and binder strategy him, which some people actually do kind of make that suggestion here. So let's move on to the next topic. You are threatening, coercing, extorting, and taking advantage of your tenants. Kratos5 says, well, what do you think is fair? For you to F off and let your greedy, lazy, scalping butt expire in the woods somewhere. That way, at least scavengers could eat you and you would actually serve some sort of meaningful purpose. A well thought out comment indeed. Any response to that one, Dion?
Well, props to the creativity of that comment. I like it. I went into a few of them and asked if they actually had something constructive to say, or were they just a keyboard coward? And then that spirals them into a bunch of statements, which is fun to watch. If a tenant were to say, what's fair is for me to stay where I'm at, then I probably wouldn't have purchased that property. That would mean that they were close to or at area average rents. Mm-hmm. I have had no tenants do that. So if it ever happens, then we'll come back and make a video about it, because so far nobody has been that unintelligent to think that it makes sense for somebody to be hundreds of dollars below the area average rents just because their previous owner purchased a house 10 or 15 years ago when properties were a third the price, or the property was paid off, and that when somebody else buys a property, they should continue to get this good deal that they've been getting because their previous owner didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, but Dion, it's their home. Dion, it's their home. How can you, what gives you the right to go in and kick someone out of their home? It's where they live.
Well, I haven't kicked anyone out yet.
It's a good point.
I would say what gives me the right to kick them out would be if they broke a lease agreement, broke part of the lease agreement, didn't pay their rent. It hasn't happened yet. So what gives me the right to kick someone out of their home is the same laws that dictate all of us. I've rented. I own. If I stop paying my property taxes, someone's going to kick me out of my property. Mm-hmm. Same thing.
So what I think is interesting is very, very, of the hundreds, if maybe not even thousands of comments that I read through, the majority of people failed to recognize that you don't have to do the binder strategy at all. Their lease will expire probably within at least 1 year, or it could already be on month to month, in which case you're just going to give your 90 days and say, okay, we're not going to renew your lease. You're not going to have an option to stay here. I would never want to put that burden of raising rents on you. So instead, I'll make sure that you have to go find somewhere else to live where you're going to double your rent instead of increase it by 30%. And people just didn't want to give that thought or that idea any merit. Dion, what do you think the reason behind that is?
Well, most tenants live in fear of a property being sold and then being told they have to move because there is a cost of moving. It's disruptive. You might not be able to find something in the same school district or close enough to work to where you have a shorter or the same amount of commute. I mean, there's a lot of things that are disruptive that way. Mm-hmm. So what I like about the strategy that I use is it gives the tenant part of the conversation. How many tenants have been included in the decision-making process of setting their own rents? Right. And then I get with the Reddit community, with not all of Reddit, with this group in Reddit, that if a landlord were to buy a property and then do the binder strategy and ignore the previously existing lease, mm-hmm. it would be breaking the law.
Right.
At least in Washington State, maybe there are states that are different, but in Washington State, where both of us live, I know you invest out of state, but the lease is between tenant and property. Not tenant and landlord. So when I acquire a property, that lease that's in existence, I'm held to it. So if they're on month to month, I still wait 2 months to have this conversation. It does a few things. And this is where the, what do you call it, coercion happens. I put in coded locks because tenants in my properties usually have keys and they like not having keys. I put in motion sensor LED exterior lights so they feel more secure. I ask the tenants if there's anything that they would like to have fixed because that might not have been pointed out in the inspection, giving them a chance to point out things that they want. 2 months later, they know I'm actually going to take care of the place because I asked what they wanted fixed and I took care of those things. Mm-hmm. That conversation goes a lot better because they know I'm going to take care of the place. And then in Washington, in order to do a rent increase over 10%, you have to give 60 days notice. So I set the rent change for 90 days in the future, giving them 3 months to mentally adjust for this change. Whether they're on an existing lease that expired or a month-to-month lease, they still get that much time. Mm-hmm. I would say they have a point. If I had high tenant turnover, but I have 16 rental units, and in 10 years, I have only had those 2 tenant turnovers, and neither one of them was because of a rent change.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of sounds like they're all up in arms about it, but in actual practicality, when you actually carry out this strategy, everybody's walking away pretty happy. Now, you kind of jumped into a couple of other topics, jumped the gun, got a little bit ahead here. So one of the main points that lots of people made was you won't be improving or remodeling the units. You just want more money and are self-admittedly lazy. L. Jefferox comments, I see no mention of him telling people he's going to fix or upgrade the property, yet he still wants to raise their rent. But it sounds like you just explained the first thing you do is you come in and you put in the motion sensor lights, you put in the locks, you make sure that if they have any questions about or concerns about the property, it immediately gets addressed. You fix those issues. And then a few months later, you would come to them with the binder strategy. And then the key takeaway here with the binder strategy is if they got 6 months left in their lease, you're not going and saying, today we're raising the rents. It's when the lease expires 6 months from now, 8 months from now, at that point, I will lock you in at a still preferable rate compared to all the houses around us in the area. And we'll lock you in at that rate if you think that's fair. And they come back and always say they volunteer to raise it themselves because they recognize how fair it is for them.
I have a thought that would have been really good to get into this article. This would work in reverse. Let's say you're a tenant and you're paying $1,300 a month in rent and the mill closes down, the car factory moves away, and everybody in your area is paying $800 a month in rent. Would you not then at the end of your lease go to your landlord and say, here's the area average rents. I think my rent should go down, landlord. What do you think would be fair? It can be flipped. This script would work in both directions. It just happens to work out in our favor, especially in years like 2020 and 2021, when a bunch of regulations cause rents to skyrocket. Mm-hmm. And now, even though my tenants aren't paying area average, they have gone up across the board.
Right. Regulation and poor government decisions resulting in inflation definitely have played a factor in this. Okay, so I think we've covered most of them. Down here, I got a couple more comments for you right here. Oh, let me see if I can edit these ones out. Okay, so you plan, as we were commenting on, you plan to immediately raise rents upon closing on the property and you're going to disregard the existing lease. We debunked that thought. The comments that went with that one were from Mountain Heat, 5853. His educating of his tenants is in actuality a veiled threat to increase it to his preferred level of rent or to evict if the outcome isn't favorable to him. Axel's OG follows up with, or keep rent the same, make tenants not hate your freaking guts, and have lifelong tenants who would love to rent from you over someone else or be able to rent it all. So again, Dion, 16 rental units, and you've only had 2 tenant turnovers ever. So that means the other 14 units, the people you bought that lived there that day are still there today?
Correct. And I house hack. I lived in a duplex for over 2 years, 3-4 years. Now I live in a fourplex next to 3 tenants in other units. And I'm super cheap. I actually rent out rooms in my unit still too.
Me too.
So I combine strategies there. But I have happy tenants. When they have a complaint or a question about something getting fixed, you fix it. One of the things that happens when you're able to increase the rents is the previous owner had the rents where they were getting such a great deal. They couldn't do things like replace garage doors or add a screen door or fix a ceiling fan that was loose because they didn't have the funds to, because they were afraid to touch the rent because they thought the tenant would move, instead of having a conversation that gets the rents to where they need to be, to where I actually have money used and set aside to fix problems, put new roofs on, fix water heaters, the things that are actually going to need to happen with a rental in the future. That is sometimes the reason a person is renting, because they can afford to rent. They can't afford to put a roof on, to fix foundation issues, to handle all of the ongoing maintenance that happens at a property. So hopefully that answered that one.
Yeah, I like it. I'm going to go ahead and go the one rogue comment I found of someone who kind of agreed with you a little bit. The one guy out there, which was probably just a Dion plant. It was probably me under a different pseudonym. Rich Boy Gobbler commented, I mean, if you're going to raise rent, this seems like the least underhanded way to do it. But I'm sure he doesn't take into account the quality of the interior living space. He already admitted that these units are likely neglected by the previous landlord, and he doesn't want to do the work to make them competitive on the market. While he may be charging below market rent, the interior of the building likely makes it a bad deal. Now, that was about the closest I could find to someone agreeing with you. They at least admitted, well, he's including us in the conversation, so that's better than not being included in the conversation. I think we'll probably wrap this up with, at the end of the day, nobody wants their rent raised, right? Nobody. But I also don't want to pay more money at the gas pump. I also don't like when the insurance costs on my cars and my properties go up. I really hate that bacon tripled from $4 to like $12 for my package of bacon. It sucks. It's not fun. The cost of everything goes up over time. And we can get into a ton of arguments as to whether that's government or war or any other number of different variables. But costs go up. And with the binder strategy, what Dion's doing and what he's actually teaching other investors to do is to try to find a happy middle ground by including the tenant in the conversation so they don't feel extorted or coerced or taken advantage of, like they have no options. You educate them on what the reality of the situation is. It's pricey to live out here wherever you live. But here's how we could swing this to help you and help me. And no, I will happily honor your lease until the day that it ends, and I'm going to repair the property and keep it in good working order. And your favorite part, your line is, does that sound fair? Dion, what are your final thoughts?
Well, to wrap it up, no one in that entire thread of the anti-work group, which doesn't surprise me, had a solution. Should rents just stay the same forever and all of your expenses go up until people lose the property? And then what are the other options? Kick them out, raise the rent, or rent control, where we saw what happened in Seattle. Over the last 2 years, some ridiculous rules have been put in place in Seattle with rent increases, not quite rent control, but so bad that Seattle lost 3,000 rental units in the last 8 months. So that means less supply for a high demand, which is going to cause rents to go up. Or maybe the government should provide housing. And then we have tenement housing where the police can't go there by themselves. That doesn't seem like the best option. I think including your tenants in the conversation, letting them see what the options are, because they can choose to move. They don't have to renew their lease either. But knowing what the rents are helps them make an informed decision. And my goal is to share the binder strategy because it helps landlords actually sustain their properties, but it also gives tenants an amount of respect because they're in the conversation for the first time that I've ever seen.
Dion, one final question for you, not to put you on the spot, but there was an extremely insightful comment, and I wanted to share this one with you. So Kirsch50 asks, when he goes to hell, the devil will present a colorful 3-ring binder showing the punishments for greedy sinners who conned the gullible. The devil will then ask, Dion, what punishment do you think is fair? So what do you got for me?
So the best outcome in a group like this is that someone has that thought. It's articulate. It means they read the entire article and they understood the concept of the binder. Because in the moment when they're lashing out at a society that they refuse to participate in or be successful in, they want to lash out with intelligence. That person is smart and funny. But someday the little switch is going to go off in their head that they could have the life they want if they got off their ass and earned it. And this is a strategy that can help them do that.
Agreed, 100%. This was actually a trick question, though, because we all know that with how trash my YouTube channel is, being forced to watch my videos on repeat for the end of all time would have actually been the correct answer. So, guys, appreciate you all for watching. Please follow Dion, who can be found on his YouTube channel, Dion Talk, and we'll catch you next time.
Again, I feel like some of those comments are going to make me cry myself to sleep on my lumpy mattress full of cash tonight. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.